Mabuhay everyone, it's your Darwin. We are the group 1 and for this afternoon, we are going to tackle about consistency. So first, let us define consistency. Consistency, according to Oxford Dictionary, it is the behavior of acting or doing things in the same way over time, especially so as to be fair or accurate. When it comes to an argument or a set of ideas, consistency does not contain any logical contradictions. Consistency when it comes to ethics is the hallmark or the distinctive feature of ethics. Ethics is known to be one that requires consistency in the sense that our moral standards, actions, and values should not be contradictory. Examining our lives to uncover inconsistencies and then modifying our moral standards and behavior so that they are consistent is an important part of moral development. This is according to scu.edu. Now, the opposite of consistency is inconsistency, which means not staying the same throughout. And as mentioned, consistency is known to be the hallmark of ethics, and in the second edition of the book Ethics, Contemporary Edition by Harry Gensler, one should avoid inconsistencies between number 1, beliefs, or also known as logicality. Number 2, your ends and means, also known as ends means consistency. Number 3, your moral judgments and how you live, or also known as the conscientiousness. And last but not the least is your evaluations of similar actions, which is also known as impartiality, which the 4 will be further discussed by the other members. So I hope you sit back and relax as we start discussing about it.
So let us proceed to avoiding an impasse. First, what is an impasse? It is a situation in which no progress is possible, especially because of disagreement or a deadlock. Example, impasses come up all the time in divorce court. The parties may honestly try to settle the matter without having bring it before a judge, so they may go to mediation, or they may try to draft up a settlement agreement with their attorneys so they can sign it and be on their way. However, they simply cannot come to an agreement on matters like child support or alimony, also called spousal support, or whether they should sell the marital residence. So both are connected. One's beliefs must be consistent in order for it to succeed and not be stagnant. So next is consistency and beliefs. So a set of beliefs is consistent if they can all be believed at the same time. Consistency isn't a matter of them persisting through time, that is, one can be fickle over time, but consistent at any one point in time when all your beliefs could possibly be true. Consistent beliefs can even be false. For example, anyone with at least one brother or sister is not an only child, and Bart is an only child. Bart has no brothers, but he does have 2 sisters, is an inconsistent belief. Whilst the Earth is a planet with one satellite, which revolves around the Sun. Planets are spherical, the Earth is not flat, it is a consistent. So, a belief is consistent if it could be true, and inconsistent if it is self-contradictory. Again, it needn't actually be true, but only possible. For example, I invented a new sedative that makes people faster and more excited. It is inconsistent. Whilst the tree is made of wood, it is consistent. And that's all. Let's proceed to the next part.
I am Maria Patricia Angelica A. Acal, and I'll be discussing consistency in will. In consistency in will, there are 2 requirements. Ends means consistency and conscientiousness. Ends means consistency requires us to keep our means in sync with our goals. I violate this if A. I have an end. B. I believe that to fulfill this end, I need to carry out specific means. And C. I don't carry out the means. For a simple understanding, an example could be, A. I want to lose weight. B. I believe that I need to eat less or exercise more to lose weight. And C. I don't eat less or exercise more. Ends are what we aim to do. And means are what we used to do or what we aim to do. Our means are the things we use and the actions we take to create our ends. The purpose of an end is to not achieve some imagined or desired future state, but rather to resolve some present challenge. So to be consistent, I must change something, give up my goal or belief, or I must follow through on the means. The other requirement is the conscientiousness. It requires our actions, resolutions, and desires to be consistent with our moral beliefs. This forbids inconsistencies between my moral judgment and how I live. We violate this if our moral beliefs clashes with how we live and how we want others to live. An example is, how would a conscientious pacifist live? It could be, killing a human being is always wrong, even if self-defense. Another example is that I avoid procrastination in the workplace and prefer to complete tasks ahead of time. I am one of those person or people who have never failed to meet a deadline. As conscientious people or person tend to follow strict rules and regulations. For more understanding, there are types of combinations that violates conscientiousness. The first one is, I believe I ought to do A, or I intentionally don't do A. Second, I believe you ought to do A, or I don't want you to do A. And lastly, I believe that all people who are A ought to be mistreated just because they're A, or I don't desire that if I were A, then I'd be mistreated. To be consistent, our moral standards, actions, and values should not be contradictory. Moreover, consistency encourages discipline and makes us focus and more aware of what we must do. So if you have done or believe one of those combinations, then you are inconsistent and your moral thinking or belief is flawed.
Good day everyone, I'm Kevin Carl Xavier. This is my lesson for Consistency 7.4 Racist Arguments. Using race as the reason for being biased. In the Consistency 7.4 Racist Arguments says that the person being racist has the mindset of the black race must be treated badly and must deserve less due to the reason to the person having the idea that white is the superior race yet can't give the reason why the black race are inferior to theirs. Yet if you want to know what evidence is to prove their support to these claims that discriminate against these races, they can provide logical reasons that support for their hate to these different races that resides within their country. With that, it shows to prove that they don't know how to handle their problems. That's why they try to proceed to blame them for their existence even if they aren't causing harm. And it shows how immature to think these people are for still thinking that there are some still standards for a race that they need to surpass and be stereotyped before given a chance to be fully accepted within a place. Next, we have the types of people that are involved in this happening. From the same study, it shows that there are some people who you will deal with that doesn't care what you say or what you do. That's why there are several groups that are either accepting and there are those who are against, because the one who are opposing side doesn't acknowledge that the race should be here and must be treated less. Due to being a different type of people, that's why the citizens who are in opposition of the immigrants have their own ideology that contrasts into those who accept different race inside their country, because for them having a diversity of races that will bring a good impression to make them feel welcome in their country. Yet today, there are still some cases that racial hate that can be still present, and there are some ways how the community responds to that. Those who are opposed, and which those two are always involved, those who are opposed in their hate crime and those who are in support, which we don't have the power to change on how badly they treat them, and they can change the opposing on how the others treat them good. Next, we have being an undesirable trait. Racism is the same as being inconsistent, which means the quality or state of not being in agreement or not being regular. which we can apply to racism, which the people are against an ethnic group setting their foot in their mainland. According to the study, racist people like to set standards or stereotypes for a certain race just to be discriminated and prejudiced. Yet they act also mighty and strong about their race, but with a little intimidation, they will not hesitate to attack you physically or emotionally, yet the standards they've given to a specific race, if given the same treatment, they'd rather forget everything they've said so far in order not to embarrass themselves. As they constantly change or make apply these standards they do not apply to themselves is quite silly. If these are your main basis to think why they should set a specific standard for a race and stereotypes before they welcome that ethnic race in their country. Next, we have racial profiling of a race. There are numerous ways on how a race is perceived through bad rumors, which in this case, the act of suspecting, targeting, and discriminating against a person on the basis of their ethnicity. Rather than the suspicion or available evidence that there are many people injured that are falsely claimed. That's why many races are affected by this, yet the people that do these claims are the citizens that are biased on other race due to the spread of rumors of what they believe and what a race are capable to do, especially if trouble is involved. Or like for example, when COVID started in the US, citizens started blaming the Asians for being the origin of the virus, because the virus originated in China and the increase of Asian hate crimes happened and may it be violence or vandalism, and is still an ongoing activity of these citizens that prove that they don't care what damage they have done to the person, yet if given the same treatment they will probably will report it to the authorities. Unwanted and cooperation. From the looks of it, it is not just one race they are being prejudiced, but all races that set foot within a foreign country may experience racism, may it be from small teasing to stereotyping and violence. We can say that those people that are racist won't take anything to change their attitude on how they address a specific race. And we can change them but they don't know that having a good relationship with a different race is actually good for building trust, and having a good relationship with a different race will bring you a lot of beneficial someday. Because if you are going to treat them good, they will not be afraid to be more open and have a sense of belonging to a group. And that is a simple way to explain globalization, where different parts of the world of how trade and technology in forms of acceptance towards a race or a product that is currently found in different parts of the world, and made the world into a more connected and peaceful place. That's why it's good to build relations, because you know they will treat you well if you also gave them the good treatment that they deserve and needed. That's all, and I thank you.
Impartiality is the requirement that we make similar evaluations about similar actions, regardless of the individuals involved. If we are impartial, then we'll evaluate an act based on what the act is like and not based on who plays what role in the situation. If we judge that an act is right or wrong for one person to do, then we'll judge that the same act would be right or wrong for anyone else to do in the same situation. We violate impartiality if we make conflicting evaluations about actions that we regard as exactly similar or relevantly similar. Two actions are exactly similar if they have all the same properties in common. They are relevantly similar if the reasons why one fits in a given moral category, good, bad, right, wrong, or whatever, also applies to the other. In the actual world, no two actions are ever exactly similar, but the notion applies usefully to hypothetical cases. To test our impartiality, we can imagine an exactly similar action in which the parties are in different places. Here is an example adapted from the Good Samaritan parable. Suppose that while you are jogging, you see a man who's been beaten, robbed, and left to die. Should you help him, perhaps by running back to make a phone call? Do you think of excuses why you shouldn't? You're busy, you don't want to get involved, and so on. You say to yourself, it would be alright for me not to help him. Here is an example adapted from the Good Samaritan parable. Suppose that while you are jogging, you see a man who's been beaten, robbed, and left to die. Should you help him, perhaps by running back to make a phone call? Do you think of excuses why you shouldn't? You're busy, you don't want to get involved, and so on. You say to yourself, it would be alright for me not to help him. Impartiality doesn't tell you what to do, and here it doesn't push you toward an obvious answer. Rather, it encourages you to reflect on the act from both perspectives. That example tests our impartiality by seeing how we evaluate an imagined second case. But then you consider an exactly reverse situation. You imagine yourself in his place. You're the one who's been beaten, robbed, and left to die. And you imagine him being in your place. He's jogging and sees you in your sad situation state. You ask yourself, would it be alright for this man not to help me in this situation? Surely not. But then you are inconsistent. What is alright for you to do to another has to be alright for the other to do to you in an imagined exactly reverse situation. In the actual world, no two acts are exactly similar, but we can always imagine an exactly similar act. If you're about to do something to another, you can imagine what it would be like for this to be done to you in an exactly similar situation. Let me end this section by raising some questions about impartiality. Remember that as we are using the term impartiality requires that we make similar evaluations about actions that we take to be exactly or relevantly similar. Question number 1. Do we violate impartiality if we say it's alright for you to drive but wrong for your brother to drive? No, we might point out differences between the cases. For example, that you have a license but he doesn't, that we take to justify the difference in evaluation. Impartiality must include a clause about the acts being relevantly or exactly similar. Question number 2. Does impartiality require that we treat everyone the same? No, we might give extra help to someone who needs it, as in the Good Samaritan case. This need not involve making conflicting evaluations about similar actions. Third question. Does impartiality require that we love everyone equally? No, it would destroy friendships and families if we had to love everyone equally. Suppose that we love our children more than we love strangers, and we think it would be alright for any parent in similar case to do the same thing. Then we are making similar evaluations about similar actions and we satisfy impartiality. Question number 4. Does impartiality require that we always act the same way in the same kind of situation? No. Life would be very boring if we had to do this. Suppose that we have a Coke one time and then later in a similar situation have a Pepsi. We might regard both actions as neutral and thus evaluate them the same way. Remember that we only violate impartiality if we make conflicting evaluations about actions that we regard as relevantly or exactly similar.
Consistency. Being consistent means that you teach yourself self-discipline when it comes to career, studies, or even personal life. Practicing consistency will have a great impact in our life because we are focused on something that will make our life successful in the future. It means that we have goals and we value our priorities in life. Consistency can help you to be a better person and can give clarity of what you are dreaming. It also helps you to get motivated about something that you really wanted to do or to achieve. When we talk about inconsistency, being inconsistent will make us more confused and can get us frustrated about something that we want to. Psychologists say that being inconsistent can develop cognitive dissonance, meaning inconsistency can affect the behavior and attitude of one person. Other than that, being inconsistent can dismiss the ideas of others and can also train us to feel guilt, anxious, and can lose self-respect in these cases.
Now there you have it. Consistency, logicality, and means consistency, conscientiousness, impartiality, and of course we also tackled, or the other group members tackled, about the racism and the effects of inconsistency. So in summary, let us first start with logicality. Logicality says to avoid inconsistent beliefs. Violating this is accepting incompatible beliefs or a belief without also accepting its logical consequences. Where an example in the book is Emma's two statements, where no duties bind universally and everyone ought to respect the values of others. The two are incompatible statements, as if everyone ought to respect the values of others, then some duties bind universally. But the first statement is completely contradicting with the second one. Logicality also requires that we accept the logical consequences of our beliefs. Now, proceeding, ends mean consistency says keep your means in harmony with your ends. This is violated when you have a goal that you know what is needed to fulfill that goal, but you do not have or you do not do what it takes to fulfill or achieve that goal. For example, in the book, you want to lose weight, but in order for you to lose weight, you are aware that you need to eat less and exercise more. But you do not do what it takes again to fulfill that goal. You do not eat less and exercise more. That shows inconsistency, right? Now, that's what ends means consistency is all about. Meanwhile, conscientiousness says keep your actions, resolutions, and desires in harmony with your moral beliefs. Impartiality says make similar evaluations about similar actions, regardless of the individuals involved. It requires to evaluate an act based on what the act is like and not based on the individual or those people who plays what role in the situation. Familiar, right? Remember the golden rule? It is the principle of treating others as one wants to be treated. So one way to best apply impartiality is evaluating the situation and looking into both perspectives. Here, you must remember that you must apply the same standards to yourself that you apply to others. Now, let's talk about inconsistency. What inconsistency leads you? So, inconsistency leads to confusion and the frustration of your desires. Inconsistency is inherently painful. And lastly, inconsistency brings social penalties. So to sum it up, ethics also requires a consistency between our ethical standards and our actions, as well as among our inner desires. Ethics requires that there will be and there should be consistency between how we treat ourselves and how we treat others. So now that we have learned about consistency and what actions violate which, I hope that we begin being consistent in our beliefs and means, moral judgments in how we live, and lastly, our evaluations of similar actions. So again, this is group 1 and this is inconsistency. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening and stay safe.